Under the harsh white lights of the hospital, alarms screamed from the machines hooked up to William Cross, one of the richest men in the country. His body jerked on the bed as nurses scrambled to keep him stable. Around him stood a circle of top doctors, each shouting orders that overlapped the other. Increase the dose. Check the oxygen. We're losing him. Their faces were red with frustration, their expensive suits under their coats soaked in sweat. These were the best minds medicine had to offer, yet every move only seemed to make the patient worse. Out in the hallway, almost hidden in the shadows, a boy pushed a mop bucket along the floor. His name was Kevin, 14 years old, the son of the night janitor. No one looked at him. No one ever did. But while the doctors argued, his eyes stayed locked on the monitor through the cracked door. He had been watching for weeks, memorizing every symptom, every strange reaction. Something didn't add up. He knew it, deep in his chest, even if no one would ever believe him. Inside the room, Dr. Peterson slammed his fist on the bed rail. 15 doctors, and still nothing works. The words echoed louder than the alarms. Kevin's grip tightened on the mop handle. 15 of the best doctors in the country couldn't save the billionaire. And yet, a boy no one noticed had already seen what they couldn't. Kevin had walked these hospital halls more nights than he could count. While other kids his age played video games or hung out with friends, he followed his mother on her night shifts, pushing carts, wiping floors, and breathing in the sharp smell of disinfectant. His mother, Diane, worked quietly, head down, always reminding him, stay out of sight. People like us don't belong in their world. She wore her uniform with pride, but Kevin could see how the doctors brushed past her like she wasn't even there. And if they ignored her, they never even noticed him. But invisibility had its own power. While he carried rags and mops, Kevin's eyes caught everything. He memorized the order of the medicines the nurses carried, watched how the doctors moved their hands in surgery through glass windows, and picked up discarded books from the hospital library like treasure. Every page he read felt like a secret meant only for him. His memory was sharp, his hunger to learn endless. He could quote symptoms and treatments the way other kids quoted rap lyrics. Diane worried about that hunger. She often pulled his arm when she saw him staring too long at a patient chart or listening to a doctor's orders. "Kevin, don't draw attention," she whispered with fear in her voice. But Kevin couldn't help it. When William Cross was brought into the hospital 2 weeks ago, Kevin watched every test, every medicine, every decline in his health. And now, seeing the alarms and the frantic doctors, he knew the truth, something about their diagnosis was wrong. The problem wasn't what they thought it was. Behind the heavy doors of the conference room, the doctors gathered in a storm of voices. Charts and test results covered the long table, but none of it brought them closer to an answer. Dr. Peterson's face was red with anger as he snapped, "We've tried everything, antivirals, antibiotics, even experimental drugs. Nothing works." Another doctor, Dr. Williams, adjusted his spotless coat and spoke with forced calm. "Perhaps it's something rare, a condition only seen overseas. That would explain the confusion." The others nodded, desperate to cling to any explanation, no matter how far-fetched. Their pride kept them circling the same empty theories. Kevin, crouched in the shadows of the hallway, knew this hospital better than his own home. He had cleaned every corner, even the vents, and that gave him access to places most people never thought about. From the thin metal grate above the room, their words reached him clearly. Each guess they made only deepened his frustration. They were wasting time, looking for rare illnesses when the real answer was right in front of them. He could see the pattern in Cross's symptoms, the same way he had seen it years ago in another patient. The boy clenched his fists. 15 doctors couldn't put the puzzle together, but he could. And if he stayed silent, the billionaire would be dead before sunrise. Kevin's heart pounded as he stepped out from the shadows, clutching the courage that had been building inside him for days. He walked straight toward Dr. Peterson, the lead doctor, who had just stormed out of the conference room. Nurses froze at the sight of a janitor's son daring to interrupt. Kevin's voice was steady, though his hands trembled. "Doctor, you're treating him for the wrong thing. This isn't some mystery disease, it's poisoning." For a moment, the hallway went silent, as if even the machines had paused to listen. Then came the laughter, short, sharp, cruel. One of the doctors smirked. "A child? From the cleaning staff? Telling us how to do our job?" Peterson's eyes narrowed, more insulted than amused. "Son, medicine isn't a game. Go back to your mother before you get yourself in trouble." Security was called, and Kevin could feel the heat of humiliation crawl up his neck. His mother rushed forward, pulling him by the arm, her face pale with fear. "Kevin, please," she whispered, "you can't talk to them like this." Around them, whispers and chuckles cut deeper than any words. But Kevin didn't back down. He looked straight at Peterson, his voice stronger this time. "If you don't test for poisoning, he'll be dead within hours." The doctors dismissed him with mocking smiles, but in Kevin's chest burned the certainty that he was right, and that their arrogance was killing a man right before their eyes. The tension inside the hospital grew heavier with every passing hour. William Cross's body trembled as another seizure rattled through him, his skin turning pale and clammy. Nurses rushed to adjust machines, while doctors shouted orders that did nothing to slow his decline. The steady beeping of the monitors broke into uneven spikes, each one a warning that time was slipping away. Kevin stood just outside the doorway, his mother's hand gripping his sleeve as if to hold him back. But his eyes stayed locked on the patient. He didn't need the monitors to tell him what he already knew: Cross was running out of time. The wrong drugs were still being pushed into his veins, and each dose only pulled him closer to the edge. Kevin's stomach twisted. He could see it all unfolding, like watching a train heading for a broken track. His mind flashed back to the case he had studied years ago, the same symptoms, the same steady fall toward death. Back then, the patient hadn't survived. Now, with one of the richest men in the world lying helpless in front of him, Kevin felt the same story playing out. He whispered under his breath, more to himself than to his mother, 12 hours. That's all he has if they don't listen. Diane looked at him, fear in her eyes, but she didn't argue. Deep down, she knew her son's strange gift had never been wrong. Kevin sat alone in the hospital library, flipping through a worn toxicology manual he had read 100 times before. His hands moved quickly over the pages, desperate to confirm what his memory already told him. That was when he heard a soft voice behind him. "Kevin?" He turned to see Dr. Jennifer Chun, a young resident who often greeted him kindly when others pretended he didn't exist. Her eyes were full of concern. "What are you doing here?" "I heard you clashed with Dr. Peterson." For a moment Kevin hesitated, unsure if he should say anything. But then he looked at her face. She wasn't mocking him, she was genuinely asking. Lowering his voice, Kevin leaned closer. "Dr. Chun, he's not dying from some mystery illness. He's being poisoned." Her eyes widened, but she didn't laugh or walk away. Instead, she studied him, waiting for more. Kevin laid it out step by step, the tremors, the confusion, the useless treatments, and how all of it matched mercury poisoning exactly. He even pointed to the exact page in the book that mirrored Cross's symptoms. Dr. Chun's silence stretched, but it wasn't disbelief, it was careful thought. "Kevin," she finally said, "are you absolutely sure?" His answer came without hesitation. 100%. She took a deep breath, glancing over her shoulder as if afraid someone might overhear. "Then what do you need from me?" Kevin's eyes lit with a mix of relief and determination. "I need access to his records, and I need your help to prove it before they kill him." For the first time that night, he wasn't completely alone. Late that night, Kevin slipped through the quiet halls like a shadow, his mop bucket rolling silently in front of him. Nurses changed shifts, security guards yawned at their posts, and no one paid attention to the boy in a faded hoodie. That was his gift, being invisible. When he reached William Cross's room, he eased the door open just enough to slide inside. The billionaire lay motionless, machines humming around him. Kevin's eyes darted to the small table lined with personal items, toothpaste, aftershave, pill bottles, even a bar of imported soap. Moving quickly, he picked each one up, turning them over in his hands, searching for anything unusual. His heart pounded harder when he noticed the toothpaste. The color looked off, just a faint silver tint, almost too small for anyone else to notice. He dug a small plastic spatula from his pocket, something he had borrowed from the lab, and scraped a tiny sample into a container. His chest tightened as footsteps echoed behind him. Slowly, he turned. Dr. Peterson stood in the doorway, two security guards at his side, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. "What do you think you're doing in here?" the doctor snapped. Kevin tightened his grip on the container and answered without fear, "Collecting evidence." The guard stepped forward, but Kevin didn't move. "Test this," he said firmly, holding out the sample. "If I'm wrong, throw me out forever. But if I'm right, you'll finally understand what's killing him." The hallway outside had gone still. Nurses leaned in to watch. Even Peterson's face betrayed a flicker of doubt. Kevin pressed on, his voice steady. "I'll take that bet. Because I know exactly what the test will show." The small container was snatched from Kevin's hand, and Dr. Peterson stormed off toward the lab, barking at a nurse to run the test. 2 hours, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Kevin stood in the hallway, his mother's worried eyes fixed on him, while doctors whispered among themselves. To most of them, this was a waste of time, an annoyance fueled by a child's imagination. But Kevin didn't flinch. He knew the truth would come back written in black and white. Those 2 hours dragged like days. Kevin paced the corridor, glancing through the round window of Cross's room. The billionaire's chest rose and fell unevenly, his skin gray under the harsh light. Every beep from the monitor seemed louder than the last, each one a countdown to the moment his body might give up. Nurses rushed in and out, adjusting wires, pushing more of the same wrong medicine into his veins. Kevin clenched his fists, whispering under his breath, "They're making it worse." His mother tugged at his sleeve, begging him to stay quiet, but his eyes stayed locked on the man fighting for his life. The minutes crawled, each one cutting deeper into Kevin's patience. He knew he was right, he could feel it with the same certainty he felt the ground under his feet. Finally, he looked at Dr. Chun and said quietly, "If they don't act when the results come back, I'll have no choice. I can't let him die while they keep guessing." For the first time, fear and determination mixed in his voice. It wasn't just about proving himself anymore, it was about saving a man who only had hours left. 2 hours later, the hallway fell into a heavy silence as Dr. Peterson walked back from the lab. His usual sharp stride was gone, replaced with slow, uneasy steps. In his hand, he held the test results, and his face was pale with something Kevin had never seen on him before, fear. The doctors crowded around, their voices dropping as Peterson finally spoke. "Positive for mercury. Lethal levels." For a moment, no one moved. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Nurses glanced at each other in shock, and the other doctors froze, their confidence cracking in an instant. Kevin didn't look surprised. He stepped forward, his voice calm and clear. "Then stop the iron treatment. It's useless. Start him on dimercaprol, 50 milligrams per pound, every 4 hours. That's the only way to pull it out of his system." Peterson's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. The boy who had been mocked, dismissed, and nearly thrown out of the hospital now stood in command of the room. The billionaire's life, once slipping away by the second, had a chance again. Inside the room, nurses hurried to prepare the new treatment. Kevin pressed his hand against the glass, watching as the antidote entered Cross's body. The steady beeps of the monitor began to even out, the wild spikes calming slowly. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time all night, there was hope. The doctors, still stunned, turned to look at the boy who had seen what none of them could. Kevin met their eyes without flinching. "I told you," he said softly. He was being poisoned. Kevin didn't stop once the test proved him right. Saving William Cross's life was only part of the truth, someone had put that poison in his body on purpose. He pulled out his phone, the screen filled with photos he had taken over the past 3 weeks. "It wasn't an accident," he said, his voice steady though the room was full of stares. "Cross was being poisoned, and I know who did it." The doctors shifted uncomfortably, but they leaned closer as Kevin explained. He had tracked every visitor who came to the billionaire's room. Only 3 people had regular access to his belongings: the head nurse, his assistant, and his ex-wife, Rebecca. Kevin swiped through his pictures, showing each one. Then he stopped on a pattern that made the room go still. Rebecca always visited just hours before Cross's health crashed. And she always brought gifts, like toothpaste and lotion. As if on cue, the door opened and Rebecca Cross walked in, holding a glossy bag. "William, dear, I brought your favorite products," she said sweetly, unaware of the tension in the air. Kevin stepped forward before anyone else could speak. "Mrs. Cross, where do you buy these?" Her smile faltered as she looked down at the boy. "Excuse me, who are you?" Kevin's reply was sharp and calm. "The one who just saved your ex-husband from dying because of the things you've been slipping him." The bag shook in her hands. Her face went pale, then angry. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. But Kevin didn't back down. He tapped the phone again, showing her entering a chemical lab where she worked, and then a video clip of her leaning over the toothpaste tube when she thought no one was watching. The silence was crushing. Rebecca's mask cracked, her voice trembling as she stammered out denials that no one believed. Dr. Peterson finally raised his hand toward security. "Call the police." The bag slipped from her grip, bottles scattering across the floor. The trap she thought was perfect had just been undone by the boy she never even noticed. 6 months later, the same hospital halls felt like a different world for Kevin and his mother. Diane no longer pushed a mop cart, she now walked with her head high as the coordinator of a new scholarship program. William Cross had fully recovered and kept his promise. He created a fund to support children like Kevin, kids who had been overlooked and underestimated. Kevin himself wore a white coat now, his name stitched neatly across the chest. Kevin Bowman, junior medical consultant. At only 15, he was the youngest consultant in the hospital's history, balancing his studies with real work that saved lives. Doctors who once laughed at him now nodded with respect when he passed. Even Dr. Peterson, still carrying the sting of that night, greeted him politely in the halls. Kevin didn't hold grudges, he only answered with a calm smile. For him, it wasn't about revenge, it was about proving that knowledge has no age or color. News outlets had covered his story for weeks, calling him the boy genius who saved a billionaire. But Kevin always told reporters the same thing: "I just observed what others ignored." Rebecca Cross sat in prison, her face splashed across headlines as the ex-wife who tried and failed to kill her husband. During her trial, when asked how she felt about being outsmarted by a teenager, she spat bitterly, "I didn't even see him." Those words traveled far, a reminder of how society often treats people like Kevin as invisible. But Kevin had turned that invisibility into his strength, proving that sometimes the eyes no one notices see more than anyone else. Kevin's story spread far beyond the walls of that hospital. To some, he became proof that talent can come from the most unlikely places. To others, he was a reminder of how dangerous it is to ignore people just because of their age, their skin, or the uniform they wear. For Kevin, none of it was about fame. He kept his head down, still studying, still walking the same halls where he had once been invisible. The only difference now was that people finally looked at him. They listened when he spoke. And they knew that without him, William Cross would be dead. The lesson was simple, but powerful: sometimes the people the world overlooks are the ones who see what everyone else misses. Genius doesn't need a title or a degree to exist, it just needs a chance. Kevin proved that with courage, patience, and determination, even the quietest voice can change lives. And while the doctors had nearly lost a billionaire to their pride, it was the janitor's son, the boy no one noticed, who reminded them of the truth: wisdom can come from anywhere. If this story moved you, stay with us. There are more stories waiting that show how strength and brilliance often rise from the most unexpected places.